So then the students who I taught will be an English teacher to the non-native speakers like myself, and from whom we really want to have some awareness about the cultural diversity or linguistic diversity. But even though those are the people who really want to have that kind of awareness, she gave me such an evaluation. The class title was Language Assessment. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for sharing that. We're going to move now to just give a little bit of background on the history of the top exam and give a little bit of an understanding of where it came from and some of the practices now. Zsuzsa will then talk a little bit about the USC International Teaching Assistant ITA test. And then we'll have a little bit of a discussion about some of the best practices for assessment from what we've seen, some of the possibilities for assessment, and then we'll open it up to some discussion because we know over the course of the past couple days we've had a lot of discussion about this already. So, Lauren, you can start.
So a little historical context. Before the test of oral proficiency, a test called SPEAK, which Adrian already spoke about, was implemented on this campus, and it's the Spoken English Assessment Kit. That had been used for, I don't know, maybe 20 years or so here on this campus. And a former graduate from Applied Linguistics, Tim Farnsworth, who's now at Hunter College for his MA thesis, evaluated the validity and the authenticity of this test and developed a new instrument, which is now used as the test of oral proficiency. And for the first couple of years that it was used, it was in a testing phase, and lots of, I guess, evaluations of the test were done, and lots of inter-rater reliability and all of these things. But part of the motivation to change the actual test or the instrument was that there was a lot of feedback, not only from test takers, but from Tim himself, who was administering SPEAK, that noted that the test didn't really represent the authenticity of the tasks that were required of these international TAs in a teaching setting. So the SPEAK exam asked questions like, with a diagram of a map, please explain how to get from point A to point B. Or another prompt was, if you had to go to the dry cleaners and your clothes weren't ready, or there was some, I don't know, something happened to your garment, how would you argue with the shopkeeper that you weren't going to pay the total amount? So tasks that weren't really authentic for a teaching setting. And so what was developed then was this test of oral proficiency with 3 tasks. The first task is not rated. It's just an opportunity for the test taker to kind of familiarize themselves with the setting. It's a little bit of small talk. The second task is an on-the-spot task. The test taker is given a prompt, which is either mock syllabus or the description of some kind of an assignment relevant to their field. If they were from humanities, it's something about, an essay or, final exam of that sort. If they were from South Campus, it was something more like, a lab activity or something like this. And then the third task, they could prepare ahead of time. It was the explanation of any topic in their field. And of course, this was designed to both balance the tasks that are required in a teaching setting where they're asked to explain, kind of in a pedagogical way, some kind of material, interaction with students, and then also they're not to measure the competency of the speakers with their content of this information, but their ability to explain a basic topic in their field. And so the test was designed in this way to try to measure interaction in the classroom, and also to manage a discourse with students. So there are, a couple of categories. There's pronunciation, rhetorical organization, grammar, and then question handling, which was specifically designed to measure this level of interaction. How could they demonstrate their understanding of the questions, but how could they also manage their own content and talking time given the types of questions that are being asked of them. And the last thing that I want to mention is that there's a really strong relationship between the current test, the test of oral proficiency, and lots of other entities on campus, lots of other stakeholders. In fact, there's a strong relationship between the exam and then resources available for these test takers to ideally and hypothetically improve their these different categories based on oral skills courses. I think that's all I have to say about that so far.
So USC is very different. Let me tell you a recent article I read that says $18 billion come from foreign students each year to the US government. So it is not only a high-stake situation for the state and each university, it is also a high-stake test, especially at USC, where they have to pay for these classes. So the difference between the top exam and what we call the ITA exam, International Teaching Assistance Exam, is that we give them these terms. We ask them to prepare a term, but we give it to them 24 hours before the exam, just to put everyone on the same level of preparation time. And again, with the principles of testing, the authenticity being that you wouldn't prepare maybe a month ahead of time for your next day class. So they get this term, which we have from the departments. So we work with the departments who send us a list of 100 terms, which says that these students who are going to teach starting next day should be aware of these basic terms, let's say in chemistry. And of course, the department relationships are very different. Some of the departments accept and support our work at the American Language Institute. We are the institute that enforces these language tests and offers and remedy classes.